The troubles in Russia did not begin in the 1900s. Tsar Alexander Romanov was assassinated in 1881. His son Alexander III took over, and the family withdrew from public life. His son Nicholas II did not build a connection to his people, nor did he understand their concerns. Unrest continued in the country, and when Nicholas took over as Tsar, his response to public displays of unrest was to put down those displays with the military. There was an attempted revolution in 1905, and while the Tsar created the Duma, a representative legislative body, his promise of a legislative process that gave the Duma a high level of prominence did not become a reality. Tsar Nicholas did not continue with the reforms to his rule, and the tensions grew in the years leading up to 1914. When the war broke out, Nicholas focused his time and effort, as well as the country's resources, in defeating the Germans. While the Russians made some initial gains at the outbreak of the war in 1914, as the Germans focused their efforts on France, the Germans pushed back those advances and began pushing into Russia. Morale fell over time, and the focus of production on military equipment and supplies meant that things needed and desired by the people, namely food, were not being produced in large enough quantities, and the unrest became protest and movement toward revolution in early 1917. Unlike 1905, when the military strength stopped the revolution, in 1917, much of the military strength was focused on the battlefield, and military support for the Tsar had waned, and the unrest grew and became greater and greater. The Tsar dissolved the Duma since it was a center of challenges to his authority, but that just made the problem worse. The Tsar was focused on the war and was near the front lines with the troops, but ultimately chose to return to focus on the unrest. Instead of resolving the issue, however, he realized the extent of the unrest and ultimately abdicated from the throne. For the first time in 300 years, the Russian people were not ruled by a Romanov Tsar. The first attempt at a post-Tsarist government was the provisional government under the leadership of Alexander Kerensky. Instead of exiting World War I to focus on Russia's needs, the provisional government chose to continue fighting. This proved to be a critical decision for the fledgling government. Vladimir Lenin was a Bolshevik leader who had been in exile for 10 years prior to the abdication of the Tsar. With the winds of change blowing through Russia, Lenin decided to go home from Switzerland. Germany was happy to oblige, paying for his trip through Germany on a train to inject him back into Russian society and disrupt the Russian government. Lenin's presence redirected the direction of the Russian Revolution. He drew people toward the Bolshevik movement with promises of bread, peace, and land, and solidified power with the October Revolution, seizing power for the Bolsheviks. Russia pulled out of World War I, but the fighting did not end there. The Bolsheviks had many enemies in Russia, and the Bolshevik Red Army fought the White Armies of various leaders and warlords. The White Armies had the support of the United States, Great Britain, France, and Japan. Tsar Nicholas's family, which was being held by the Bolsheviks, was killed by the Bolsheviks in July of 1918. The counter-revolutionary movement to restore Tsar Nicholas to the throne would not achieve its goal. The fighting of World War I stopped in 1918, but the Russian Civil War continued for 3 more years. Ultimately, the Bolsheviks prevailed and the Communist Soviet Union was born.